What if one day you suddenly remembered that in a past life, you were a king with unimaginable power? Or maybe a killer hiding in the shadows? Would you dare to face that truth? Throughout history, some individuals have claimed vivid memories of past lives. These aren't vague dreams, but detailed experiences that feel more real than imagination. One of the most compelling stories comes from a monk who, during deep meditation, began to recall scenes from lifetimes long before his current one. At first, the images came as flashes, faces he had never seen, places he had never visited in this life. But as the visions deepened, he began to recognize patterns, connections between who he once was and the lessons he faced now. This wasn't just a mystical curiosity. For him, these memories carried powerful truths about karma, the journey of the soul, and the hidden continuity of consciousness. As the monk's visions unfolded, he remembered a life where he was a warrior, standing on a battlefield, drenched in blood and fear. Another life revealed him as a farmer, living quietly with his family, cherishing simple joys. And in yet another, he saw himself as a scholar, endlessly searching for wisdom. What struck him wasn't just the variety of these identities, but the invisible thread connecting them all. Every decision, every action seemed to ripple forward into the next existence. The anger he carried as a warrior became the lessons of patience he needed as a farmer. The hunger for knowledge as a scholar transformed into the discipline of meditation in his present life as a monk. These weren't random stories. They were chapters in a much larger book, the book of his soul. And with each memory he began to understand. Nothing is wasted, nothing is forgotten. Consciousness is not broken by death. It flows endlessly, shaping who we are and who we are becoming. The monk realized that these memories weren't accidents or fantasies. They carried teachings that echoed across lifetimes. In one vision, he saw how greed in a past life led to loss and sorrow in the next. In another, he recognized how a small act of kindness once planted the seed for a lifetime of blessings. This understanding revealed to him the true nature of karma, not as punishment or reward, but as an intricate web of cause and effect, weaving together every action and thought. Karma was not about judgment, it was about balance. Just as gravity pulls us back to the earth, karma gently pulls the soul toward lessons it has yet to learn. For the first time, he began to see his current struggles not as misfortunes, but as opportunities. Each challenge he faced as a monk, the discipline of fasting, the silence of meditation, the surrender of ego, wasn't random. They were echoes of choices made long ago, rising again so he could meet them with greater wisdom. He understood that reincarnation was not simply about being reborn, it was about evolution, a soul learning, expanding, and moving closer to its true essence with each cycle of life. If this story opened something within you, don't stop here. Subscribe and turn on the bell, because there are more hidden truths waiting to be uncovered. As the monk's visions deepened, he realized that memory was not limited to the brain. It was as if consciousness itself carried an imprint, a subtle energy record of every choice, emotion, and intention. He described it as pages in an invisible book, one that every soul writes upon, lifetime after lifetime. In meditation, he began to access this book. Sometimes it came as vivid scenes, walking in ancient marketplaces, standing on battlefields, or praying in temples long crumbled to dust. At other times, it was not images, but feelings, a heavy guilt pressing his chest, or a wave of serenity that brought tears to his eyes. Each sensation carried wisdom. He realized that past lives were not meant to trap us in nostalgia or regret. They were meant to awaken us. By recognizing patterns, greed, anger, compassion, love, he could understand the threads weaving through his soul's journey. It was like seeing the same melody played in different instruments across centuries. This insight gave him a profound sense of freedom. If every life was connected, then nothing was wasted. Even his mistakes had meaning. And if each cycle brought him closer to wisdom, then death was no longer an ending. It was simply a doorway. The monk began to test these revelations in daily life. If past lives were real, then their echoes must appear in the present. He started to notice patterns, the people he felt instantly connected to, as if he had known them forever, the unexplained fears that surfaced without reason, the strange talents he never studied but somehow mastered with ease. For him, reincarnation was no longer just a belief. It was a living truth, shaping every encounter. A friend who betrayed him stirred memories of an old rival. A child he taught reminded him of a student from centuries ago. Even his struggles with illness mirrored wounds carried from other lifetimes. But he also realized something crucial. These patterns were not destiny. They were opportunities. If he met betrayal again, he could respond with forgiveness instead of vengeance. If fear arose, he could face it with courage. In doing so, he was rewriting the script of his soul, breaking cycles that had repeated for lifetimes. The monk often said, "Karma is not a punishment, it is a mirror." Through these reflections, he understood that the purpose of remembering past lives was not curiosity, but transformation. The past whispered so that the present could awaken, and in that awakening, the future could finally change. As the monk deepened his practice, he noticed another dimension opening. The continuity of consciousness was not limited to himself. When he meditated with others, sometimes he could glimpse fragments of their journeys too, like a mirror reflecting not just his soul, but the souls around him. It was as if an invisible thread wove all beings together, carrying lessons across generations. He described how one disciple, struggling with anger, carried echoes of a warrior's life filled with bloodshed. Another, blessed with compassion, radiated the memory of a healer who had once served countless villages. These weren't fantasies, they were archetypal imprints shaping who they were now. The monk warned that such memories were not to be chased recklessly. The past can seduce with its dramas of power and loss. But without wisdom, diving into those memories could trap a person in illusion, making them relive old wounds instead of healing them. He often reminded seekers, the point is not to see more, but to be more. Past lives were like shadows on the wall. They guided you only if you had the courage to step into the light. With this awareness, he urged his students to approach memory not as entertainment, but as a sacred tool for growth. One night, during a deep retreat, the monk experienced something that shook even his own faith. As he slipped into a profound meditation, memories poured in, not just of a single life, but of dozens. He saw himself as a king adored by thousands, and then as a prisoner shackled in a cold cell. He felt the warmth of family in one life, and the unbearable loneliness of exile in another. The most unsettling vision was not of grandeur or suffering. It was the realization that he had once been both the oppressor and the oppressed, the healer and the destroyer. Every role he judged in others he had already played. Karma, he realized, was not punishment but reflection. The universe was holding up a mirror, asking, "Will you finally learn, or must you repeat again?" He later admitted to his students that these visions terrified him at first. To see the fullness of your soul's journey means facing both your light and your shadow. Many seekers crave the glory of past lives, imagining they were warriors or queens. But how many are ready to see that they were also the betrayer, the tyrant, the thief? The monk's warning was clear. Awakening is not about comforting illusions, it's about courage. The courage to embrace every fragment of who you've been and to transform it into wisdom for who you are becoming. In the days after this revelation, the monk carried a quiet gravity. His students noticed he spoke less, but when he did, every word seemed to echo with the weight of lifetimes. He told them, "Your soul is not defined by one single life. It is a river, flowing through countless landscapes, shaping and reshaping itself. What you do today is the stone that redirects tomorrow's current." He emphasized that the true purpose of recalling past lives isn't to inflate the ego with titles of kings or saints. It's to recognize the patterns you've repeated and to finally choose differently. When you see that you've both inflicted wounds and healed them, you begin to understand that your power lies in responsibility. The monk's story spread beyond his monastery, inspiring seekers who had never even heard of reincarnation. Some felt awe, others doubt, and some fear. But one truth lingered. Memory of the soul is never random. It surfaces only when you are ready to face it. And so, the question is left to us. If your past lives were laid bare before you, every triumph, every failure, every shadow and light, would you have the courage to look? Or would you turn away, waiting for another lifetime to finally learn? If past lives are real, do you think our success or suffering today is the result of choices we made in another lifetime?